Okay, all right. So we are here. So hi everybody. My name is Ifonabo Mondia, and I am a community manager and developer advocate. I currently work with Shekod Africa as a community manager, and I also do their girl um here and there for a couple of products. I write technical articles, and I am an entrepreneur and a nation ambassador. So I like to share knowledge as much as I can when I have the opportunity. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can go to connect with me on LinkedIn at Funnable Mondia or Twitter at the Lady Bella. All right, so today's session is on building your second brain with Notion. And just for those that probably are hearing this for the first time or have heard this before, a second brain is like your digital system that acts as an extension of your memory. It helps you store data, it helps you organize, and it helps you retrieve ideas, tasks, and knowledge in general. You know that as humans, um we do have a lot that goes on in our head. Like this minute you're thinking about 1,001 things that you have to do. The next minute, you have this bright idea to build a product. Another minute, you have this idea to open up a business. Like things just keep coming to our head. And you realize that most times when you don't jot down those things or document them, you tend to forget, right? And the thing is, our brains are excellent at creativity and problem solving. If something happens now, like your brain is thinking fast, or what should we do in this situation? But the problem that comes with it is that it's not going to be there for a long time. So you as a person or as an individual is expected to create a long-term storage for it. And the thing is, once you've lost an idea, it might take a while before it comes back. And sometimes even when it comes back, it doesn't come back in the same context. So let me give a typical case scenario. Let's say you want to open a food business, for instance, and you just wanted to maybe cook from your house, deliver, right? And you didn't document that whole knowledge of how you want this food business to run. And then that idea leaves your head. And then maybe another few months' time, the same idea comes back to your head, and it comes in a different way. Or maybe you can actually get a food truck, have various food trucks and place them in different campuses. That's your brain upgrading the idea you had before. And if you probably don't document that, or if you probably don't just execute it, maybe in another few months' time, another idea will come. Or why not just do pre-packed meals instead of having a food truck, right? So it's always important that you document things as they come to you the time, because the progressive um information that comes out of your head helps you improve what had already come before, so you don't expect to have the same ideas over and over again. And then you should also understand that in today's digital age, information is scattered. And if you have a second brain, it helps you centralize it. What I mean by this is that information is scattered everywhere. You go to Google, there are 1,001 resources out there talking about a particular thing. And most times, those resources can be very obsolete, like they're not needed at that moment, or it's not useful in the context you're trying to use it for. So, what do? Right? When you eventually figure out something that works, if you have a second brain that helps you document it, you could just say, oh, out of these 1,001 resources that I found out, these are the top five that worked out for me. Imagine you didn't bookmark those or keep them somewhere. Then, by the time you need that information again, you have to go back and start combing through, all kinds of resources that you see online. All right. So now that brings me to what actually is a second brain. It's your personal and external repository for your thoughts, notes, and resources. So it just helps you make information accessible anytime without trying to recall, oh, I thought about this the other day. What was it? You probably lose your train of thoughts by the time you remember, that you had an idea to open a food business the other time. Right. So it's like your external repository. As you're thinking about something, you put it down. As you're thinking about going to that store to ask the Amala woman if she conducts classes or if she does that, you put it down. If you thought of maybe taking a course on metrics tracking or impact making, like it's just you offloading information from your brain into a particular workspace. So think of your second brain as your personal Google for your life. It gives you mental clarity, better idea connections, and a faster recall. I gave a typical case scenario of researching on a particular thing, and you see lots and lots of resources. And at the end of the day, you discover that out of the resources that you've seen, just five is useful to you. Now, you need to save those five, you need to store it somewhere because you might need it again. Right. And when you need it, how do you search for it? How do you go back to it? So that's where your second brain becomes a personal Google, because then you'd be able to go back to it and you can easily find information that you have already searched for before. All right. And in this case, why are we choosing Notion to create our second brain? Notion is an all-in-one productivity and note-taking app that combines database, documents, collaboration tools into one workspace. So in other words, you don't need to create different documents. You don't need to have different things scattered everywhere. Personally, I am a lover of writing in as much as I have a fully functional Notion workspace. I still write a lot. Like I have different notepads for different things. I have, for instance, I have a notepad where I jot down stuff about work, where I jot down stuff about career. I have another one where I jot down stuff about travel, anything and everything. So I just have different notepads like that. And while that helps me offload the information I have in my brain, it's a bit limiting because I might be out and I need to get to my notepad that has everything about travel, and I'm not able to access it until I get back home. So that is why you need a digital platform that will help you create a Notion, a second brain, and that is Notion. So unlike basic notes apps, Notion is highly customizable. For those of you that have used Notion before or have seen how to use Notion or how to create certain pages or databases on Notion, you would see how customizable it is. Currently, Notion supports creation of forms. Notion also supports you creating landing pages. There's so many things you can do with Notion. So it's highly customizable, and then it can handle everything from project management to journaling, even to your calculations. It's just an all-in-one. And then it serves as a perfect container for a second brain because it supports interlinking and multi-format content. So like you can upload your images, even your videos, you can, segment what is in your second brain. Like you can create tags, this is what I want, or this is how I want it displayed. It just helps you customize that experience so it's not so boring or not so overwhelming. All right. So when creating the second brain, there's this framework I like using, the PARA framework, and it basically stands for projects, stands for areas, it stands for resources, and it stands for archives. So it's a method for organizing digital information efficiently. Look at this framework as that framework that ensures clarity and separation between active and stored information. We do have information. Okay, let me give you a typical case scenario. For the next 3 days, try to jot down. You can just get a notebook, nothing fancy. But for the next 3 days, try to jot down every single things that comes to your mind, like every single thing. It can be you going to buy something, it can be you putting a call across to your friend, it can be you building one project or one product or whatever. Like just jot down every single thing that comes to your head. As it's coming, you're writing it down for the next 3 days. And you're going to see that it's going to keep, like, it's almost going to feel like your head cannot stop pouring out or your brain cannot stop pouring out. Like there's nothing as you pouring out of your brain and it becomes empty. There's always something to think about. And that's because our brain stores so much information that sometimes, maybe after a while, it wipes off, right? In most cases, it comes back. So try that experiment and let us know on the group chat if this was successful for you. For the next 3 days, jotting down the things that comes to mind. Did you run out of ideas? Did you run out of things to write about or things to say? Let's hear from you and know how that experiment went. So for the power framework, projects can be your short-term projects or your goal-driven activities with deadlines. So like basically anything that you're working on that has a deadline. And then also have areas. So like long-term responsibilities without a defined end date. We'll be going into this shortly. And then we have resources. So resources could be collections of useful or inspirational materials that is in line with your project or that is in line with your goals or areas, anything that concerns you that you want to document in your second brain. And then finally, we have the archives, which is the inactive items for your reference, right? So like this could be stuff that you're no longer interested in, or they could be projects that you have completed or things that you have closed out on. And don't get me wrong, keeping a second brain doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to completely achieve everything that you've written down. The main essence is just to offload your brain, right, and create more space for fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. So there's a high chance that at the end of the day, with the many things that you've been able to put down, you may not even use quarter of them. So always keep your mind open for that. And then here are the benefits of having a second brain. It's like it gives tangible improvements. It improves your experience when using a second brain. The first thing is it lowers your cognitive load and it frees up your mental space. I cannot overemphasize this enough. Sometimes when I'm feeling depressed, I feel like my brain is so clogged, like there's so many things on my mind. I just start writing. Depending on how I feel, I can just start typing, or in most cases, I could just use my journal and start writing. You know, the more you write, the more it flows. And sometimes you might open up that blank page and want to start writing, or you might open up your book or your journal and want to start writing, and you discover that nothing is coming to your head. You can just start anything, start anywhere. You know, you can crack a joke or tell a story or something, and before you know it, it's going to link up with other ideas or other things in your head, and it starts freeing up your mental space. And from freeing up your mental space, it gets to that point where you're, you know, having other ideas of what to talk about or what to complain about. So it lowers cognitive load and it frees up your mental space. And secondly, it helps you with better creativity from connecting ideas across fields. You, by the time you download everything that is in your head into a more visual thing, like a second brain where you can see or you can read, it helps you connect your ideas. You know, you might have ideas of things to do, projects to build, products to build, stuffs to achieve, but you might not necessarily know that, you know, you can, maybe you have a food business, for instance. I like using food business because I have a food business. So you might want to, let's say you have a food business, for instance, and then you have another idea to build a mobile app, or you have another idea to build a startup, a tech startup. Most people usually confuse the fact that, oh, because it's a food business, it cannot qualify as a food startup, or as a startup, rather, a tech startup. And then the fact that you have all these thoughts in your head, or you want to build a food business, or you want to build a tech startup, or you want to do this and that, by the time you put that down, it's going to help you connect the creativity across those fields. And then you'd see how you could possibly turn your food business into a tech startup. Oh, if I want to turn this food business into a tech startup, what do I need to do? How do I need to do it? Then you begin to see how each of these things connect. So it's always good to jot down or write down your projects, write down your goals, ideas, and things that you want to work on. You never can tell. You might just have the same idea into different sections, and marrying them all into one could be that powerful thing that you need. And then thirdly, it helps with consistent project execution. Having something written down and properly documented constantly reminds you of why you started a particular thing, where you're currently at, and where you're heading to. And most times, when I personally feel overwhelmed and want to give up on something or want to stop doing a particular thing, like that feeling might just come temporarily, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to look back to the drawing board. Why did I even decide to do this in the first place? And by the time you go through the initial vision that you had, by the time you go through the ideas and what got you to that point, you then discover that, no, I don't need to give up on this. Maybe let me just think of how to improve this idea, or let me think of how to move on from here. So it helps a consistent project execution. Writing it down, seeing what you're supposed to do, increases your chances of achieving or reaching the conclusion of your projects faster. And then fourthly, a long-term digital library of your life's work. It's one thing for you to have a second brain, is another thing for you to properly document stuff. You know, over the weekend, I had the opportunity to go to Abeokuta, and in there we went to the Olusegun Obasanjo's library, and I was so amazed. I don't know if there's any of us here that has been to that library before, but I was so amazed at how he has been able to document his entire life. When all these slangs that where they say evidence choke, like you can't say that he has not done anything, because like the evidence is literally there from the days of his when he was very young. In fact, right from when he was born, thankfully his parents were also keeping diaries and stuffs about him. So putting all those things together, and the ideas that he came up with, how he executed it, and so like it just makes a lot of sense to see someone be able to build an entire library about his life's work, right? And it's the same thing as you building a digital library of your life's work. You may not have the money to go and build a huge library and call it to your name and make people come see, oh, this is what this person has done, and all of that. But building a second brain digitally helps you build that library digitally as well, because like there's going to be a progression of the things that you have been able to come up with over the years and how you have been able to execute it. So your second brain is not just a dumping ground of ideas or things that you've thought of. It's also a dumping ground of processes, stages, things that you want to execute, how you want to execute them, standard operation guidelines. Were you able to execute it? How were you able to execute it? What was the feedback, or what was the, success like? So it's an entire ecosystem of you ideating and getting to the finish line. The second brain should be a trusted partner, not an extra burden. You're not trying to have another huge responsibility of keeping another document, that stresses you out. It's supposed to be a partner. It's supposed to be something that guides you. It's supposed to support your human brain, right? You're just trying to take the extra load off your human brain and just make sure that your second brain has been fully optimized to work perfectly for you. And then the goal is to think less about remembering and more about creating. When you have a second brain, you don't have to start thinking of the stuff that you thought of last week. You can just easily go back to your second brain and you're like, oh yeah, let me check this out. What did I do? How did I do this? Or, I think I thought of something like this. Let me go back to it. Like, you're just going back to make references. You're not trying to remember. And when that happens, it gives you the opportunity to continue creating and being as free as possible. All right. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm going to try to use the next 10 to 15 minutes to quickly set up a very simple second brain for us to see. So, first off, before you get to create your second brain, I'm assuming that you all have a Notion workspace or a Notion account. So you create your Notion page or your Notion documents, and then you create 4 main pages. So, feel free to make this as stylish or as friendly as possible. Feel free to do that, but you're going to give it different names. So you're going to name it according to the Power Framework. You have your projects, you have your areas, you have resources, you have archives, right? So once you do that, it doesn't have to be a very perfect template, or it doesn't have to be, your second brain doesn't have to be 100% perfect. I think the idea around second brain is that people in general feel like it has to be something very robust, something very comprehensive. No, it doesn't have to be that. It can be as easy as you buying a notepad or a journal that has different sections, and then on section 1 you can just write maybe areas. Section 2, you can just write projects, and then you jot everything that has to do with it. So look at it like an empty blank page that helps you dump in information and create a roadmap from there. So if you don't have that patience of um, creating from scratch, you can utilize templates. Thankfully, Notion has the template section now. And then you can capture ideas from books, podcasts, conversations, or random thoughts. Like, it could be anything and everything, as long as it's something that resonates with you and resonates with your projects that you're working on, or resonates with your lifetime goals. It doesn't matter where it comes from, you can always capture it. And then if you're documenting maybe from a particular book or podcast, always remember to put the proper naming convention and timestamps to it. So for instance, let's say for instance you saw a quote in Still Like an Artist, or let's say you saw a quote in the Atomic Habits by James Clear, you saw a particular quote that resonates with you or something that resonates with your goal, you might just go ahead and document that and be very specific that it came from page XYZ from Atomic Habits by James Clear, something like that. And then with Notion, remember I did mention that Notion can be um, customizable. So you can customize with tags, with topics, and with relationships. How does your project relate to the area? So if you have any new resources that you're adding, does it relate to any of your projects? Does it relate to any of your goals? And then humans tend to forget if they do not keep track, and that's because our brains are constantly processing information. Things happen every day. Sometimes new things happen, sometimes old things happen, but things just keeps happening. It just keeps happening, right? So your brain is working 24/7. Even when you are sleeping, your brain is still working because it needs to cooperate with your body to give you that rest, to make you sleep, put you in a state of sleep or shut down your body or something. So at every point in time, your brain is always and always working. So always try to schedule weekly and monthly reviews on the things that you have in your second brain, the projects that I have to work on, what are the timelines or what are the deadlines? How do I intend to, make this work, or how do I intend to achieve this? Or, being able to look at where you started, how far you've come, and where you're going to helps you stay updated with the things that are coming out from your head. And if at any point you're no longer feeling like this doesn't, you feel like um this doesn't align with what I want, you can just send it to the archive. So yeah, weekly reviews will help you um keep your project updated, and their monthly reviews will ensure that your long-term organization or your long-term goals are in line with your current actions. Okay, and then archiving completed projects prevents overwhelm. So you don't need to keep your projects if they are no longer useful. It's completely okay for you to reassess some projects and you notice that, oh, they are no longer in line with the vision or with the things that you're looking at achieving. That way, you archive them. If there are projects that you've worked on, you've achieved them, you archive them and make sure they're properly, you know, um, documented. And the reason why I'm using the word archive is because it's just like you decluttering your head with the things in your brain. You also need to declutter your second brain because you don't want it to be so overwhelming. Okay, so I'm just gonna show. Oh, I always like putting these quotes on every um productivity related session that I have with anyone. It's a quote by Pablo Picasso, and it says action is a foundational key to all success. So like what that basically means is, yes, you have learned about second brain. What are you going to do after that? I did give a nudge at the beginning of this session. For the next 3 days, try to write down every single thing that comes to your head. And then at the end of the 3 days, let us know on the group chat. Did you stop writing at any point because you didn't have anything coming out from your mind? Or did you just keep writing and writing? The more you write, the more things come up. So after this session, don't just say to yourself that you joined the second brain, building your second brain online session with Notion. You think of what to do next, think of the experiments, think of how to make that turn that into a reality. All right, so I'm going to check if we have any questions for now. And Let me see. Okay, no questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And we are going to attend to that. So now I created this private page, a blank page, because I just wanted to show a sample of what I mean by creating a second brain. So, I mean, this naming your Notion page can be something as easy as Bella's second brain. And then what happens now is how you're going to start documenting the things that you have. So remember, I did mention that you're going to use the para method. So the first page that you'll be creating will be your projects. Have the second page, which will be the areas, and then you have the third page, which will be resources, and then archives. All right, so we're going to highlight this and turn it into a page. Well, I like adding emojis to my stuff. So you can always add whatever emoji that resonates with you, but for the sake of this, we are just going to put anything and everything as an emoji. So now starting off with projects, and sometimes, yes, I forgot to mention, in as much as you're creating a second brain, you need to always give context to, everything that you're doing, because in the next 2-3 years, you might come to this page and you probably don't understand or can't remember why you did this or why you created this. So you can always give a description to everything you're putting down in your second brain. For instance, this is or you can say, I am building different sections for my second brain. And then you might want to go as far as talking about what each of these sections do. But let's go to projects, for instance. For projects, obviously, you may want to put out like more information on what the project section is. So this section highlights all the projects that I want to work on. And with Notion, remember that with Notion, you can always create as many pages as possible. So for projects, let's say projects like this, I have, let's say I have my brand, Pasta de Cafe. I have the Friday Extra. I have maybe CM Growth Lab, right? So obviously, I'm trying to jot down different things for these three brands, for instance, and I won't be able to do that on this page because there's going to be clash of interest. So what would happen now is I'm going to further turn these into different pages, right? And then opening this, I can now start writing everything that I want to write about Pasta de Cafe. So for instance, let's say, depends on how, again, it depends on how you want to document this. Most people don't like the idea of databases, but I feel like databases actually make things pretty easy, where you can just see all the projects you have, the things you're working on, where you're stuck, and know what you've completed or what you've not completed. Other people just like the idea of writing. So now this is where you get to choose your style. If you're someone that is more interested in writing, you can just start writing away. You can say something like Q3. So in Q3, what am I looking at doing? This is Q3, this is August, and then start writing out things that come to your mind. And depending on how you want to do this, you might want to document this. You might want to document this daily, or you might want to draft out different sections. So let's say new ideas. So you can say, I want to have new ideas of this section. Let me just put dummy words. So new ideas of this section, and then you might want to just go ahead and say, what am I currently facing right now or today? And just jot down the challenges, or jot down, maybe you had a new a way of doing a particular thing, or you're scrapping out a particular thing, like you're just putting down everything and anything. And then there's also the database format, where you can go ahead and create a database. So let me just quickly share this. For those that don't know, when you're creating databases, when you say full page, it means that it's going to open a full page for you, and you won't be able to write any text under it or above or description or whatnot. But when you create an inline database, it creates it within that page that you worked on. So that simply means that you can always change stuff or move things around or add more text behind it. So let's just call this project name, and then we can say, oh, we're tracking the status. You remember that in the previous slides, I did mention that for your projects, they usually do have deadlines. So that means you need to add dates. You need to probably add maybe an area of what you want your project to be about. Let's name that. Okay. So we're still on Pasa the Cafe. So I'm just thinking, as a small business owner that is thinking of her business, what is in my mind? What do I need to do? How do I need to improve this business? I want to say something like maybe launch PDC websites. So now this is a project that I want to do. And you know that having this project in mind, launching a PDC website simply means that I should have a deadline of when I want to launch this website. So that's where you start, customizing with the stuff that you need to do. The area can fall into business. The area can fall into business because you're not just building a second brain for your business. You can build a second brain for yourself. You can build a second brain for your friends, the thoughts you have about your friends, the plans, celebrations, events. You can build a second brain for your work, the projects that you're executing at work. So it's always good to properly put them into different areas, and also tracking the status of if you're doing this or if you're not doing this. And then you write away. So like under this now, what am I looking at doing by tomorrow? Let's say I draft down what I want to do for this website. By tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and say, I think I want to add something else. And then I come back to this brain and dump it there until, when I actually execute this. And when this has been done, I can now move it to another page. So this is a typical case scenario on how to properly document your second brain. Nothing serious. And the good thing with it is that since you're using Notion, over time it evolves. Like as the ideas come by, there's a certain way you may want to present it on your Notion document. You may want to add images to it. You may want to add links. So, for instance, this PDC website now, if I have, let's say, specific websites that I want to copy, I could say something like, visit this link for inspiration, for, and then you go to this, and then you mention the project that you're working on. So that way you don't have to start combing through your entire second brain to look for ideas or to look for where you wrote things down. Properly hyperlinking things within your second brain would help you easily, find the information that you're looking for. So let's say there's an actual link now, and by the time I'm ready to build this website, I go back to this and I see, visit the link for inspiration for PDC website. Okay, I've seen the inspiration link. Let me now go back to PDC website, and then I open up these documents and I'm able to see, the all the ideas I had about the website, the things that I wanted to do. And that's pretty much it. This applies to your personal life, your relationships, your friendships, your personal projects, your work projects, and it could also be any project at all, could also be something that is in relation to you. So these ones now are my brands. You can do something like work evidence. So this is an important one that I think everyone should try out. So there is work evidence. Now, this work evidence, let's say I want to document everything that I am working on at She Code Africa, for instance. I'm going to turn this into a page, and then I'm going to say, okay, under projects, here are the projects that I have personally executed. Here are comments or screenshots, that I have gotten from people. Like, you're just documenting everything about your work. Or let's say I want to do that with my previous company phase. So this is for everything and anything. It doesn't follow any particular pattern in way of documentation. You just have to make sure that it follows through these four stages, or these four um uh these four stages in the framework. So yeah, that brings us to the end of our session today. I'm going to leave the remaining 10 minutes if we have any specific questions on building a second brain, or if we're good, or if you can just say anything and everything that comes to mind. The things that you're looking at executing, or what you learn in this session. So I'm just going to give the floor back to Eddie. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys learned a thing or two in this session.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Mfanabong. That was really amazing. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. I hope you guys have learned 2 or 3 things. And please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat box there. And if nobody wants to ask a question, I'll be asking questions. So prepare yourself.
I don't know if you're speaking, Eddie. Hear you. I guess I asked a question.
Can you guys hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. All right. All right. Since there are no questions, I'm just going to give a brief, very, very brief